right. So, Terri, my expectation is that you're going to blow my mind and I'm going to be emotionally uncomfortable after this conversation. So, I want to talk about high functioning codependency and how smart ass women who are doing it all, think they don't have codependency issues and the sneaky suspicion of it. So, what made you, write your book Too Much? Because you did have your boundary book, Boundary Boss.
Yep.
And then Too Much. So let's dive in.
All right, let's do it. Why I wrote Too Much, and the subtitle is A Guide to Breaking the Cycle of High Functioning Codependency. So high functioning codependency is a term that I coined because of my own therapy practice and my own experience in my own life. So for me, I wrote in Boundary Boss, there was one chapter on HFC, as we call it, high functioning codependency. And I got so many people writing in, so many comments online being like, we need more of this. Oh my God, I didn't know there was a name for it. This is me. So why I came up with it is because I have these extremely capable women, literally the masters of the universe, in my therapy practice, in my mastermind, in my groups. And if I would point out, oh, hey, what you're describing, this is a codependent pattern, they would immediately be like, no, you are incorrect, lady, because everyone's dependent on me. I can't be codependent. I'm making all the money. I'm managing all the people. When things move, it's because I move them. So how am I dependent? And they were being unduly influenced by the codependent no more, Melody Beatty. You have to be enabling an alcoholic to be a codependent, and all the negative myths around it. Being weak, the long-suffering lady sitting at home waiting for her partner who's a gambler or whatever. None of the women in my practice, and myself included, and I'm sure you too, there's literally no identification with that because we are a very capable and empowered crew. So the problem, of course, is that I couldn't help them with what the issue was if they didn't see themselves in the issue. And then I started really looking at what are the differences? How is this high functioning codependency, which I've been talking about for many years, I coined the phrase years ago, how is it different? And I realized that the irony with being an HFC is that the more capable you are, the less codependency looks like codependency. But it still is, and we're still exhausted, and we still get burnt out, and we're still bitter, and we're still overfunctioning and overgiving and all the things. So with my clients, as soon as I changed the name, all of them could raise their hands saying, me, I'm the problem, it's me, without shame. And they understood like, wow, I am doing all the things for all the people. And why? And the urgency of it all and the compulsion of it all. And so this is how really it started. So let's just get a working definition. Terri Cole's working definition of codependency. It is when you are overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, the circumstances, the relationships, finances, careers, all the things of the people in your life to the detriment of your own internal peace. So we're not saying, obviously, we're invested in the people we love. We want them to be happy. Clearly, that's called being in relationships and being a human being. But when you're an HFC, you actually feel overly responsible for those things. It's not just being concerned. It's like taking it on, not really knowing what is my side of the street and what is your side of the street. If you're in pain, that's my side of the street, according to me, if I'm an HFC. So that's the definition. That's what we're working with.
If you are in, what did you just say? If you are in pain, what was the last part you just said?
I said, if you're in pain, now your side of the street becomes my side of the street. Mm-hmm. Because I, as an HFC, think the whole neighborhood is my side of the street. Like I feel responsible for everyone, even people I don't know sometimes.
But as an HFC, I probably am willing to own my own side of the street, correct? But I'm going to take yours on too. Is that what you see?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Well, let's talk a little bit about the traits and or whatever questions you have.
Let's do the traits. So people
So
can be like, oh, shit. And then add to cart.
Exactly. All right. So first, feeling overly responsible for other people's problems.
And alone, you say that, I go adult or teenage children, adult children, team,
Yes.
partner,
Friends,
friends,
siblings.
clients, aging parents, which I'm
Oh my
curious
God,
about
of
that
course.
as well. Okay, keep
Yes,
going.
all the things. Giving till it hurts, so to speak, like going above and beyond, doing things a lot of times people have not asked us to do. We just think it would be nice, or we just think that they need it, or we don't think that they're going to be able to make their rent, so we move money over to them, or whatever the thing is. Always ready to jump into damage control mode, because truthfully, nobody's better in a crisis than an HFC.
Mm-hmm.
We've got it locked down. We are not afraid. We are very calm. We're like step one, step two. Um, Getting frustrated or angry with others because we are auto advice givers. We cannot stop giving people our grade A, very well thought out advice. We just think there's a better way that you could be doing that. We think that there's a more efficient way to do whatever it is. Someone has a problem, immediately we're like, okay, well, I know a great oncologist at Sloan. So I'll make a call. Like, the person isn't even done saying what they're saying, and we're already in our mind being like, going to be emailing that doctor when we're done. I've got a great book I can give you. But what happens is we also can get frustrated when people don't take our grade A advice that we gave so lovingly and willingly to them. And then they want to talk about the same crap that they're doing nothing about. And that can be very frustrating when you're an HFC. Because as HFCs, when we have a feeling we don't like, we get into action.
Yeah.
We will do something to not feel that feeling. And we're like, hey, I'm just problem solving. But we're also running away from the way we feel. You might feel exhausted, resentful, bitter, right? This starts happening if you are doing this so long. So overly self-sacrificing, auto advice giving, we already hit, auto accommodating. What does that mean? That means you're in a social situation and you just see a need and you're just going to fix whatever that thing is. And I tell the story in the book about, I was at my hair salon in Manhattan. It was like a busy Saturday. I usually never go on Saturday because it's a zoo. And I have a mask on my hair, meaning nobody's doing anything to it. My hair is just soaking in this stuff and I'm laying in a sink. And all of a sudden, the sink traffic starts backing up. One person, two people, three people. Each person that gets added to that line, my stress is going higher and higher. Like, I don't need this sink. I could move. I raise my hand. I get the assistant to come over. I'm like, I could sit somewhere else. She was kind of like, I think we have it covered, lady, because we do this every fucking Saturday. Like, whatever you're worrying about, relax. But how interesting is that? What could I have been doing instead of worrying about the sink flow at my salon, as if I have some expertise in that, which I don't? I could have been meditating, resting my exhausted brain, listening to a podcast. I don't know, just enjoying life. But instead, I was feeling responsible for something that isn't mine. Another one of the behaviors is anticipatory planning. So we know we're going to be with certain people. Yeah. We know those people, maybe they're difficult or they're not that easy to please. So we make sure if Uncle Bob is coming and Uncle Jimmy are coming and they don't like each other, well, they won't sit near each other. I'll make sure I have the booze that both of them drink. I will put this one at that table. Like, we're twisting ourselves up in a pretzel rather than having a hard conversation like, Uncle Bob, if you can't be a normal person at Christmas, then don't come, right? If you can't get it together for 12 hours or 4 hours or 2 hours for a party, don't come. But we don't have that conversation. Instead, we twist ourselves up with anticipatory planning. And then the overfunctioning and underfunctioning dynamic that we create in our relationships, where we do more, which inspires other people to do less. Part of the time, other people are doing less because we're also perfectionists, because we're also very specific about the way we want shit done. We also, mantras for HFCs. It has to be me is one mantra. It's just easier if I do it myself. We're just doing it because we don't like the way they're going to do it anyway. We don't want it to be done subpar. It's easier, but that really is a short-sighted plan, because that strategy doesn't work for the long haul. Because what is happening? We are self-abandoning to endlessly take one for the team, so to speak, or that's what we think we're doing. At least that's what I thought I was doing. I was always like a team player, like, even the accommodating, if let's say you and your partner both were going to work, if it was like 5 years ago and people still went to work, and they walk out and there's one of the cars has a flat tire, your immediate response would be, take the other car, I'll take an Uber, just go. Like, let's just get it figured out, whatever the thing is that needs to be figured out. But so much of the time, we're doing that at the expense of ourselves. And a lot of people will say to me online, Terri, what if I'm just nice? Maybe I'm just generous like that. Maybe I'm just being caring. And I say, if you can't not do it, it is not you being nice. It is a compulsion, just like any other compulsion, right? If you can't not do it.
I was going to ask you that. Where's the fine line between generosity and being of service and not over delivering? But like, I understand what you're saying, where it's like, there's all these stories that come in. Mm-hmm. So where is that fine line of, I'm thinking about teams specifically, clients and children who are, which different emotional attachments, who are still developing a prefrontal cortex, and push in, lean out. What do you say there?
Well, I say, first of all, if anyone here is like, gee, I wonder if I'm an HFC, even though probably plenty of people are like, I know I am, but where to even start? Usually people online are like, okay, so this is overwhelming. Where do I start? Well, let's start with doing a resentment inventory. Right? Because where we're feeling resentful, that can indicate where a boundary needs to be drawn, where we are over functioning or over giving. Perhaps we're doing things for people that they can and should be doing for themselves. And then we feel underappreciated, because when your motive is fear, right? When your motive is control, because at its base, the foundation of any kind of codependent behavior is an overt or covert bid or attempt to control someone else's outcome. Right? We don't want the person to fail. We don't want the kid to get in trouble at school. We don't, right? So again, understand, since I'm an HFC in recovery, there's no judgment in any of this. Mm-hmm. We are all lovers. We're all mothers and friends and aunties and all the things, right? So obviously our heart is in the right place, but we have to look at the behavior. If we're feeling resentful, then we can't really give, and we're not really giving from a place of love. We're probably giving from a place of control. I don't want you to do that thing, so I'm going to make sure that you have whatever it is. So we do a resentment inventory. That can sort of be the beginning. And what you can ask yourself as you get into recovery, and I walk you through, all the stages of recovery in the book, obviously, but we get to a point where before you agree to do anything, you ask yourself two questions. Can I do this? Like, do I have the bandwidth to do this without becoming resentful? And in the beginning, you may not know that well, but the more you ask yourself, the more you will know that really you're a no inside, but you're just not giving yourself permission to say it. And the second question is, do I even effing want to do it? Now, not when it comes to kids, obviously. We're not talking about minor children. We're not talking about aging parents. Listen, when you're a person who has a family, there's going to be endless shit you're doing that you would rather not be doing. This is just called being a citizen on planet Earth, right? This is how we have relationships. I'm talking about doing these things all of this is to the detriment of you. And it's also to the detriment of your relationships. So let's look at the appropriateness, because I think that this is what you were talking about. You were talking about team, you were talking about aging parents, you were talking about children, prefrontal cortex, right? There was a whole group of how do we know. The resentments inventory will be very helpful, because when you go, I'm really resenting my 17-year-old, then you go, why? I'm resenting him because I'm still doing his laundry and he's capable enough to figure out how to, go to fish for the weekend or whatever he's capable enough of doing. Mm-hmm. And then you go, okay, so what do I need to do to change my 50% of this dynamic with my 17-year-old? I need to tell my 17-year-old, hey, I'm done doing your laundry. I put instructions, I taped them up downstairs right next to the washing machine. You could probably figure it out. I'm happy to walk you through it. And if they're like, why? And why don't you want to be a mother anymore or whatever? Because some kids will try to guilt you into doing what they don't want to do. You have the conversation. Hey, because you're fully capable. For me, doing your laundry when you were 9 is perfectly appropriate. Me doing it for you when you're 17, probably not necessary because you're going to be out of here soon. And I want you to know how to do it when you live on your own or whatever your conversation would be. But this is how you're going to know. It's like we're going to use the resentment inventory as a GPS of like, where do I start making some of these changes?
Mm-hmm. I can see people. So I'm going to use your example, leaning in. And then that's where we have to start feeling our feelings because we have the instructions for the laundry and that child or young adult is now going to test you and be like, I know her. She's not going to follow through with this boundary. But let's say you decide to follow through with this boundary. What I'm going to hear is, but Heather or Terri, he's not going to do it. He's not going to do his laundry and he's just going to keep regressing and he's going to go into this pit and he's overwhelmed and he needs help and blah, 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 blah. What do you say when she's trying to justify why she needs to do something for someone or why she can't relinquish control?
Right. Well, I'd have an honest conversation and say, first of all, let's visualize this. If today you got abducted by aliens, Mom, today, would your son go naked? Would he never wash his clothes? Would he go out and buy new clothes instead of washing his clothes? No, he wouldn't. It's an illusion. The it has to be me is an illusion because the sad truth of life is if I was abducted by aliens today, you know what would happen? The sun would still come up tomorrow. My family would be sad and then they would move on. Like the thing where we feel like it actually has to be me, it doesn't. If you didn't do it, someone else would.
Yeah.
All your work, if you got abducted by aliens, your boss would give it to someone else. Would the world stop turning? Would your son literally die? If you didn't do his laundry, he wouldn't. Or whatever else you're thinking. I think that what we have to look at, though, and it's a really perfectly expressed argument because it's what I hear from therapy clients as well. And I think we have to look at the parenting style where when we're auto advice giving, when we're over functioning, what we are doing is we are inserting ourselves as the answer to the problem. We are centering that child's situation on us and our grade A advice. So let's think about what we can do instead, right? If you have a kid who has a problem at school, instead of immediately saying, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk to this person. I've already hired this person. We're doing this. Before anything, you say, all right, tell me what happened, and then tell me what you think you should do. Even if you end up telling them what you think they should do, it is worlds better to ask expansive questions in all of your relationships. This includes your team if you're micromanaging them work-wise. In my team, the way that it works, if there's a problem, do not come to me with the problem unless you also have a solution.
Yeah.
At least an idea, at least a thought.
I'm hearing you talk about leadership, which is what I think, I think we see formal leadership when it comes to I have a team and I'm leading a team, but it's the same as when we're leading other people. The other thing I'm reflecting on as you're talking is how we are actually taking away from someone else's growth and learning opportunity when we are doing their work for them. And it's really just us not willing to sit in our emotional discomfort while they're crossing the shaky bridge.
Yes. And here's the thing. We are doing it for ourselves.
Yes. Repeat that again.
We're not doing it for them. We're really not because it's a compulsion. We're doing it for us. We cannot tolerate the unknown. We hate it so much. We can't tolerate the flailing, right? Everyone has a right to succeed or fail, to thrive or flail. Kids, partners, sisters, flail. Don't know what they're doing. Part of what the origin of this, of high functioning codependency and my own understanding of how much of an HFC I was in my 20s, this came about through a story that I tell in the book of one of my sisters who was in an abusive relationship, living in the woods without running water, without electricity. She was actively alcoholic and this person was doing crack and was abusive. Like it was an HFC nightmare, 5-alarm fire every day of my life. I couldn't, all I could think of is, how am I getting her out of there? What am I doing? Everything I was doing wasn't working because there was so much urgency. I could barely live my own life. I had just gotten married. I had 3 stepsons now. I just became a psychotherapist. Like, I had so much going on in my own life, but I was like obsessed with getting my sister out of this situation. So I go to my therapist, week after week crying. And this week I go in and I was like, Bev, I've done everything. I don't know what else to do. I've done everything. What am I going to do? And she just looked at me compassionately, but she said, Terri, let me ask you, why do you think you know what your sister needs to learn and how she needs to learn it in this life? And I was like, well, I think we can agree she doesn't need to do it with the crackhead in the woods. And she was like, I literally can't agree to that because I don't know, because I'm not God, but neither are you. So do you know what's happening for you? And I was like, obviously not. So can you clue me in? And she said, Terri, you have worked hard in therapy for years to create a harmonious life. Your sister's dumpster fire is really messing with your peace. And you want to fix her so your pain will end. And I was like, you are not lying, lady. Fact, I want her to be fixed. So yes, I want her pain to end, of course. But it was much more about my own pain than I would have liked to have thought. And in doing that, I said, well, what do I do? She's like, this is the beginning of boundaries. She was like, draw boundaries. So told my sister, hey, listen, I can't talk about this guy with you anymore. I love you. If and when you ever actually want to get out of there, I'm still your person. But until then, we got to keep it brief because I can't deal. And less than 9 months later, we talked a few times, but less than 9 months later, she called me. Are you still my person? Of course I am. I got in my car, picked her up. She got sober. So got into recovery herself, went back to school herself, has never been in an abusive relationship. And that was almost 3 decades ago since then. And the most important part of the story is that instead of her youngest sister saving her, she got to be the hero of her own story. So it could last, right? Me saving her wouldn't last because she didn't reach her bottom. She wasn't ready. She gets to get the self-esteem that comes from doing the hard thing. And this is the same thing in our relationships when we're overfunctioning for people. We are, exactly as you said, robbing them, of their autonomy, but we're also robbing them of their right to feel proud of themselves, to do things on their own growth. And we also really don't know what people should be doing. Like, exactly. Like, did I think that she should be doing something other than drinking in the woods with no running water? Sure. That's obvious. But what that path was going to look like, I wouldn't have thought she should do what she ended up doing, right? Because it's not my life.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not God, and you cannot go down her path for her. And it actually made me emotional when you were talking about it, was when you held that boundary, you stated, like, when you're ready, I will be here for you. And what literally is giving me goosebumps is you're like, I will be your person when you're ready. And how often can people say, I guarantee you there were many times during that journey where she was like, I know she's there for me. Like, oftentimes we don't know we have a person. Like, who is our rock? Who is our person? And when that person is holding really, really healthy boundaries and they're like, okay, I'm ready. Like, you're the first person they call. And that is such a gift, such a gift.
Yeah. It really just, it's so satisfying too, to not be grabbing the spotlight, to be able to just be in the front row cheering her on in her life,
Okay. 2 things that are coming up for me are, number one, I've been talking a lot about living a time-rich life because I talk a lot about energy management and all the things. I want to talk about time and this high functioning codependency and the time richness of life, that when you actually lean into this and heal these parts of yourself, you're like, I have way more time. I have way more energy.
Correct.
And can you talk about the duality of, like, I don't have time, I want time. And then you get it and you're like, oh shit. Because time is not the actual issue.
Correct. Well, yes. What's on the other side? Because what you're talking about, Heather, is that what's on the other side of recovery, which is all of this bandwidth that you will bring back to you all of this energetic bandwidth, psychological, emotional bandwidth that you're not using, sort of obsessing about other people and their lives and what they are or aren't doing. You now have to sit with your own feelings. And that can be hard, but yet it's a privilege. And I walk you through it in the book. One of the chapters in the book is all about emotional self-regulation, where we actually, for the first time, I teach you how to become intimate with your own actual feelings. Because so much of the time, if I would ask my clients, what they want, what we want is HFCs so much of the time, even when we're ambitious, right? We want success, sure, but what we want is peace. We want harmony. We want people to be happy. We want the people we love to be happy. We don't want there to be any problems. We want everything to be good. I think that that's common. Like normal people, that's what you want. But that can't be it. There's got to be something for you. You've got to want to know yourself. Give yourself what you need. Honor how you actually feel, right? When you ask those questions, can I do this without becoming bitter? Or do I even want to do it? Then you have to honor that. If the answer is, I really don't. And of course, we weigh it out through the lens of what are our obligations and what are the things that we said we would do and whatever, right? If it's super important to my friend, even if I don't feel like doing it, will I probably do it because she really wants me to? I may, but I'll ask her. I won't just make the assumption that everything she does, I need to be there for, So on the other side, with the time management stuff that you're talking about, is better health, is more time for meditation, self-reflection, accepting people. Because, Heather, when we talk about in this world of what we do, we talk about holding space for people. And I always didn't like that phrase because I always felt like nobody even fucking knew what it meant. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I ever knew what it meant until I wrote this book. And I realized that holding space for someone is saying, I'll be with you in the foxhole of your not knowing. I'll tolerate my discomfort to be here for you, to help you figure it out in whatever way it works for you by asking questions like, how can I best support you right now? Not making assumptions, not just auto advice giving. Never now having that be the first thing that you do with someone, even a kid, even a 9-year-old. It's always the first question is, what do you think you should do? Because this is how we respect other people's autonomy. And this is how we teach kids critical thinking and data. There's so many things that we should be teaching children because really we're preparing them to be out in the world. And if we overfunction for them, we are doing them a disservice because we are not preparing them. So anyway, I don't know if I answered the time management question, but when you think about what the real flex is relationally, it's being with someone in their dark night of the soul without treating them like a problem to be fixed by you.
Yeah. And when you do that, you get a lot of your resources back. What is coming up for me, and I could talk to you forever because I'm like, yes, is when you identify that you are high functioning codependent and you're like, okay, now I'm going into recovery and I'm going to do all the things. Mm-hmm. Do you find that people have a little bit of identity crisis because they're like, who am I if I'm not rescuing all these people? Yeah. So that can be very emotionally uncomfortable. So what do you notice in that identity crisis? I mean, I'm like, yeah, you're in a crisis, like an identity crisis. That means growth is happening. You just got to keep leaning in and go through, because a huge part of purpose and fulfillment has come from pleasing other people in some capacity. So how do you get that sense of, just anything you want to talk to about that identity crisis that is expected when you are untangling this?
All right. Well, first of all, being HFCs, you are extraordinary, right? So just know that the tweaks that we're talking about, this isn't like changing your entire personality, even though you feel like it might be. It's not. You are loving and caring and wonderful, and you're so capable. You are the masters of the universe. So you're just going to be healthier by doing it this way. So you're not going to change. I'm still an empath. I'm still an incredibly caring person. It just means you're going to be doing it from a mindful place. You may still choose to be incredibly generous to the people in your life. You can choose that. I'm just going to teach you how to do it mindfully so that you don't end up resentful. Right? That's all we want. So with the identity crisis, I think that there are a few things we need to accept and understand. That if we are to be healthy human beings, we have to realize that sometimes we have to disappoint other people. And, Cheryl Richardson has a book called Let Me Disappoint You. So I talk about this in the book and ways that we can get more comfortable, because you're not going to be comfortable. If you've been a high performing people pleaser, you're not going to be comfortable when someone is disappointed in you. We're like the ultimate good girls, right? We don't like that. We want everyone to think we're amazing, and we don't want people to be disappointed, but it's part of the process. And I want you to realize that if you're not willing to disappoint other people, then you will be disappointing yourself. And when we get down to it, your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship you'll ever have in your life. And it sets the bar for every other relationship that you have. So if you treat yourself like shit, if you don't rest when you're tired, if you're constantly taking one for the team, you will also attract people who think that that's the proper way of treating you, which is incorrect. So I think that we have to really look at the way that we relate to ourselves. Another thing that's helpful to do when you're in this process of changing, because you'll get to a place, I call it the in-between, where you're aware that you're very clear about these behaviors that you don't want to do anymore. You have these aspirational behaviors, you're about to get there, maybe some of them you're trying, you're doing, but you're sort of in between that. So you haven't mastered this and you can't do this because you know too much. So it can be painful. You're like, where are my weapons? Like, where's my, So I think that we have to, when you think about other people and you want to intervene, you have to, in your mind, and this is a Mel Robbins thing, just say, let them. Your sister's going to buy this thing that you don't think that you should buy. Let her. Just realize when we say let them, there's something that happens with the nervous system. There's a relaxation that happens where it also gives you a moment to go, my sister's finances are not mine. If she wants to buy that stupid purse for $4,000 and she can afford it, like, just let her, you know what I mean? Let her, realizing it's not your side of the street. And the last thing I want to say about the identity thing is that when you go through the emotional part of the getting really intimate with your emotions, you're going to be building your self-esteem and your self-identity on other things. Because if you continue to bleed this level of bandwidth, you'll only reach a certain, it's a glass ceiling of your own making that I see with my HFC clients if they don't get into recovery. Because you can only do this for so long. You will never be a great leader if you're overfunctioning or micromanaging your staff. You will never have really deeply intimate relationships if you're managing the shit out of your partner. You just don't, because management is not the same as relating from a heart-centered place. So you don't want to be creating this glass ceiling of your own making. And this is the process of dismantling that.
I love this. So clearly I could just feel and sense everyone listening to this is going, oh shit. So let's give them the next step, Terri. They're getting your book. They are doing the step-by-step. So where can we send everyone so they can get more of this and kind of get into recovery?
I love it. So I have an HFC toolkit for you just as a free gift. Go to terricole.com/HFC. And I think there'll be a link there to purchase the book too, if you haven't. And this will just get you started, right? But hopefully, I want to leave you with the thought that as capable as you are in all the ways, remember that when you're struggling with this, because you can do anything. And this is something that if you really want to do it, I promise you, this book will walk you through it step by step, and you will be so much happier, so much healthier, and so much more peaceful on the other side.
Awesome. So that was Terri, TERRI, Cole/HFC.
Yep.
Amazing. And your book, Too Much, they can get it anywhere books are sold online?
Yes. And there's hfcbook.com, which is where all the bonuses are as well. I also have a pod, which is the Terri Cole Show. If people want more of this, because this is basically what the podcast is, just talking about this stuff.
Awesome. Thank you, Terri.
Thank you for having me.